what's the need for that? That, for over centuries we have been practicing religion. And one of the aims is to experience peace and establish peace. But now, as we look at ourselves, we look at the society around, we see so much of peacelessness. We see so much of division. And therefore we need to ask ourselves that the way we have been practicing religion, is there some distortion in it, the way it started and the way over time the practice has happened, and today we are at this juncture where there is even fear of religion. And so we have some people now who really do not want to enter into this aspect of going into the practice of any religion. And so we need to understand, when we say religion, what exactly religion means and what exactly I want to achieve out of it. And yes, one very important aspect which we want to experience through this medium, this method called religion, is we want to have an experience of peace. And from where will peace come? Will it come from outside? And where is the source of peace? Or a question arises, who is the source of peace? And with this peacelessness around us, we need to even look into our hearts, that if we are peaceless, then where is it that I have to start for peace? And when we start looking into ourselves, one small thing which we can understand is that peacelessness is not exactly our original nature. Because, for example, if I take a very simple aspect, not something very, very complicated, let's look at us as individuals, because individual peace is connected to societal peace. And so let us look at us ourselves as individuals and ask myself that if I want to be peaceful, where should I start? And is peacelessness the original or the human nature at all? Because when we get angry, we always say that I have become angry. And then after some time, we again become peaceful. We say, for example, in Hindi, gussa aya. Aya means it has come. And gussa fir jata hai. It goes. It comes, it goes. It means it is not mine. What is my treasure as an individual? My treasure, my originality is peace. Because when we say something like anything negative other than peace, it is not an independent function, it is a dependent function of peace. Darkness is a dependent function of light. Light is not dependent. And similarly, positivity is independent, it exists, and when there has been less and less and less of it, then we have given it lot of names, lot of negative names. And those negative names I don't think I have to say, because we are living with it, we are seeing it, we are experiencing it. So the first thing we need to realize as an individual, only then we can talk of the community, because I am a responsible individual. And if all of us become responsible, then a responsible community, and then there will be some who are weak, but then we can always help them to enhance into their quality of peace. So the most important thing is, we individuals who have, we all have our shelter, food, we have all these resources, all of us who are seated here, for example. So we have to take the responsibility of understanding that basically we are peaceful by nature. The original human nature is peace. Anger or anything else connected to that, is not my original nature. And when I start being that, the speaker earlier, he helped me by saying that religion is to be. But to be what? To be what? To be positive, to be peaceful. And religion says that that is what you originally are. You are peaceful. And only when you become conscious of the physical differences, the denominator is a very common one. The human soul, the human consciousness, the being in the human body. At that level we are all peaceful. But when we start looking at ourselves in terms of language, religion, then all those other things, then definitely we start having a lot of differences. One more thing which I would like to share is only when there is that sense of universal brotherhood, then we will be living and we will let others live also. But to get into that sense that yes, everybody is my brethren, everybody is of the same family, if I have to get into that sort of a consciousness, I need to really understand the fatherhood of God. And it is here that we are all falling into differences. And therefore, once we start going and understanding this aspect that God is one, the Creator is one. If He can be compared to a seed, then the tree of humanity definitely will have a lot of branches, and there is nothing wrong in having different branches. So if we can understand this model, that the tree of humanity is a tree of variety of people, races, languages, religions, at the level above. But deep inside, like a seed is deep inside and the tree is visible, the visibility is all a lot of differences. But the connectivity is at the level of fatherhood of God, the seed, the Creator. And when we connect ourselves at that level, at that consciousness, and because I am connected to the seed, you also are connected to the seed, all of us are connected to the same seed, the God. That is why once I start getting into that consciousness, then you, who might be into any religion, any race, any place, any language, all the different variety things, then still you are my brother. And that family feeling, that universal family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, when we say, that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam can be practiced, can be done into something which is possible once we connect ourselves at this level, that we are the children of the one and the only one, rather than my religion, your religion, his religion. So that connectivity will help us to experience peace. And the third thing, that when we say religion in Hindi, Sanskrit, we call it as dharma. And dharma actually means something which you practice, not what you simply say. And everything in the world has a dharma. Even the 5 elements have a dharma. And the beauty of nature is it remains in its dharma. But the only problem is the human being has gone away from his or her dharma. Chili will not try to become sugar, sugar will not try to become chili. They have their dharma, they will be in that. But only human beings, we try to become somebody else. And when we have that sort of a consciousness, when we try to become somebody else than what you actually are, then you have all the problems in the world. And therefore, religion which says that be yourself, be your peaceful self that you actually are, introspect, reflect on this aspect that you are a peaceful self and you belong only to one and one, then definitely all of us together we can establish peace in the world. Om Shanti.
Just a brief comment before we presentations are open for discussion. You know, Holyoake coined the term one. He deliberately adopted not atheism because he did not want to be seen as adopting a term that was the opposite of binary opposite of religion. He wanted a term which embodied the spirit of his age. And under that term, he could forge an alliance with the working classes to bring about reform in education. The lesson we learn is that secularism and religion actually constitute each other. Religion is imbued with the secular spirit when you start questioning it, when you start questioning inherited faith. And one of the ways in which Shad questioned, and this mix of papers in this session was very illustrative, is when you start saying, isn't religion also a form of power in its institutionalized form, a form of power that breeds injustice? So on the one hand, we do have the understanding now that religion offers to what was Marx's soul in a soulless world, but it also is a form of power, and therefore the need to keep the two separated to whatever extent is possible. It is now all the presentations. We only have 10 minutes, so short, brief question.
Can I ask? Yeah. My question is to Professor Elia. Sir, you talked about religion and the inherent violence in religion. So later, I think one of the later speakers also pointed towards violence involved in other religions. But I want to ask you, how do you look at the category of violence in religion? Is it an ontological category or is it more teleological? Because you have extensively talked about this iconography of violence in Hinduism. Not just here, I have heard you many times, and you talk about the iconography of violence in Hinduism. So I'm just asking, even in other religions, for instance, Ambedkar's this iconic conversion we often refer to, but look at the Rohingyas and the Buddhist conflict in that we come across now, or the Sri Lankan Tamils and how the Buddhists there treat the Sri Lankan Tamils. For that matter, so is it is it the problem with religion, or is it the way in which it's more of a teleological thing? Carrying on, I also want to point out, religions which claim that there is no caste. For instance, in Islam, we are familiar with this Masood Alam Falahi's work of caste in North Indian Islam, or a whole lot of such works have come out. So other religions, or the Christian Dalits in Kerala, they also talk about caste in Christianity. So how do you look at this problem, connecting it to Hinduism alone?
To Mr. Ailaya once again, sir, I want to submit to you whatever grievances and complaints you have about Hindu society.
Who are you addressing your comment or criticism?
Yeah, I'm asking a question. I want to submit to you that whatever statements you made today are plain lies, because they are no more true. You can learn Sanskrit wherever you want. Right now you heard a spiritual lecture, everybody was sitting here, you are also sitting here. You can also read Gita whenever you want. If you want to learn Vedas, you can go to Arya Samaj. Any caste person can go and learn anything. Please don't speak lies.
My question to Professor Kancha Elia, 2-3 things. Ambedkar said that the soul of Hinduism is inequality. This is what he said. You said that the Hindu gods has created inequality because of the creation of the hierarchical caste or varna system, we can say. Maybe the entire congregation is surprising to hear that Kancha Elia is shepherd. We had a good shepherd. So Jesus Christ was termed as a good shepherd because he keeps the sheep around, provides comfort, so that he can carry the sins of the what we call the universe. That one. So,
sorry.
Inequality, the religion creates inequality. How can it be elevated, number one? This is my point. How the inequality was created by casteism or a religion or Hinduism? This is my question.
Yes.
I have a question to Kancha Ilayya, sir. Sir, you have referred to abolition of caste system. The Supreme Court has not made its efforts to abolish caste system in this country. Even the Constitution has not made it. Can you clarify me a doubt? Then whether the caste system can be abolished without abolishing the caste-based reservation or affirmative action of the state? That is my question.
Thank you. No more questions. Kancha, 5 minutes. You're always the most provocative.
I'll start with the last. If you look at the latest Supreme Court judgment, which came there into the Supreme Court in relation to Verma's defining Verma's judgment, defining Hinduism, Hindutva.
He didn't say Hinduism, he said Hindutva.
No, but the whole question has come. This judgment, without going to that categorically mentioning, the Chief Justice directly said the relationship between God and me is personal. He is including Hinduism in that. So indirectly they defined Hinduism as a religion and included caste along with, equated caste along with religion in the election campaign, which has a deeper implication because caste is an hierarchy of inequalities, oppression. So mobilization, mobilization against inequality is natural in election. Therefore, unless you abolish caste in the Constitution, even Supreme Court cannot stop people using that as a mobilization tool. Now, there are many questions which I can't answer one by one. See, all religions have differentiations and groups, but the specific nature of Hinduism is through textual creation of perpetual unequal birth itself. Now, I have been asking whether you would amend that in the Rig Veda. No. Then the question of learning Sanskrit, that is not the issue. Even the Supreme Court, Justice Ramana again, said that only one caste based on their spiritual text called Agamas could be the priest. That is casteism. Therefore, the whole question of violence is through. Hinduism has used violence to create caste. It is using violence to sustain them. If some Dalits skinned a dead cow, killing 5 of them, 10 of them, they are saying is less than killing the cow. That's the worst. There is no religion in the world which can define human life like that. So, that's where even the Brahma Kumaris did not look at this. What is caste? What is untouchability? So how do you deal with them in terms of peace? Where do they go? So therefore my point is, whether it is Ambedkar or me, when a religious leadership defined production as pollution, which has gone into the sociological teaching of universities, that the most destructive, violent form of constructing religion. That's what Hinduism is, and we are experiencing. See, somebody who sits in the top cannot decide what we are experiencing. 100 million people are experiencing this. Therefore, what we say is truth in India, not the other saying truth. That's what it is. Thank you.
Yeah. Except that women that's why they're not allowed. So maybe you should, this is a cross caste, gender is a cross caste. That's why you cannot enter temples.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Women are polluted. Yes, please. It's not only caste, it's also gender. And I think gender is trans caste.
Well,
yes.
Sir, Madam, it's not a question to Dr. Kancha Ilayya. Sir, I've been longing to hear you for a long time. I admire your courage, standing up for the cause of justice. And nobody can threaten you or anything, do anything when you're speaking rationally. Different people have different views of rationality. And I, for one, I have a different view. But I'm not going to attack you, or I'm not going to criticize you, but I'll admire you for your strength in standing up for the cause. Thank you.
Just to correct my friend, in this case, they did not add caste. It is already there in the Representation of People's Act. There is a definition of corrupt electoral practice. So seeking vote in the name of religion, in the name of caste, in the name of language, and also in the name of national honor. So you can't seek votes in the name of constitution or in the name of national flag or national emblem. And the judges refused specifically that they are not reconsidering the 1995 Hindutva judgment because it has not been included in the reference. A reference to 7-judge bench was made by a 3-judge bench. Now 3-judge bench framed a question, and the question was only what is the meaning of his. Does it mean that you can't seek vote only in the name of religion of the candidate? The majority said no. It would also include seeking votes in the name of religion or caste. By the way, in the constitution, I will agree with you, does recognize caste. But it recognizes caste to help people because it says it is a most crucial indicator of somebody's backwardness. So caste has been recognized to help certain people, but it is very much recognized.
So my argument on this is, if you re-examine and reframe the rules legally from Supreme Court in relation to People's Representation Act, including caste mobilization along with religion, caste is an Indian specific oppressive form. Religion is universal. When you are using a universal category and equating a specific oppressive form with a religion, there is that danger. Therefore, tomorrow, Bahujan Samaj Party can be attacked. Mayawati, all papers are asking, how can Mayawati say I am a Dalit Beti now? So this is absolutely wrong judgment. The majority are wrong.